More now on our breaking story tonight that the Obama administration's Department of Justice said in a court document just weeks ago, estimated that essentially tens of millions of Americans would lose their employer-based health insurance. Employer-based. This is the same time the president was telling the American people that this was all a mistake, and what he said he really meant, he was just in error. And just today, the New York Times, I say, suggests a repeal of the law might actually be possible, similar to the way a controversial health care law was repealed nearly 25 years ago. Judge Andrew Napolitano is our Fox News senior judicial analyst, and many people may not remember the 1989 Medicare Catastrophic Coverage Act, but it was big, it was very unpopular, and it died a painful death about 17 months after it was passed.
And it was repealed. I didn't remember it until one of your producers sent it to me. This was a parting gift by Ronald Reagan to the generation of seniors on Medicare, which would, by increasing their premiums, have capped their maximum exposure. Guess what? Most of them didn't realize they had to pay the premiums. And some of them thought by paying those premiums, they were going to get their worst fears relieved, which is what happens if they have to go into a nursing home. They didn't realize they didn't have a choice not to pay the premiums, and this didn't cover nursing homes.
No, I mean, it's similar to what we're seeing now, where it's you have to pay more, but it's for the greater good.
Correct. There was no misrepresentation by the president, by Ronald Reagan in 1988, as there was by Barack Obama in the years leading up to this, as recently as a month ago.
But once it started being implemented.
And people had to pay the $2,000 additional premium, whether they wanted it or not, whether they needed the additional premium or not, there was an uproar. And George H.W. Bush, the newly elected president, said, we got to get rid of this thing.
We got to get out of this.
I know Ronald Reagan just signed it, but it's not working. Let's undo it. And the Congress, a Democratic Congress, undid it by majority vote.
The turning point in that debate was when a group of people literally jumped on the car, essentially stormed the car, I'm told, of Dan Rostenkowski, the late representative, who was then chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. And a meeting with seniors, here it is, in Chicago. Look at this.
It's a very famous clip.
Look at this. This is how ticked off people were because they felt that things had been misrepresented to them, and critical mass was reached. And that law was repealed, Judge. Are we reaching critical mass now with Obamacare?
I think we're reaching critical mass for two reasons. One, it simply does not work mathematically. And two, the 5.5 million people who will lose their policies between now and December 31st of this year, just 45 or 50 days from now, are basically people the president set out to help, and he will have betrayed his own people by materially misleading them. And they will not forgive and they will not forget, because this profoundly hurts them. What do you do when you don't have health care and you don't have the means to get the product that you once had?
Yeah, especially when the fix may not work for the vast majority of the people it's intended to help now. You mentioned that in the 1989 law there was no fraud, misstatement, erroneous representation, whatever you want to call it.
No.
Here we have a different scenario, and now we've got this DOJ document. I mean, you're a judge.
The brief that you just discussed with Andy McCarthy, a very fine lawyer, is profound. The President of the United States is a lawyer and a legal scholar. As a law student, was the chairman of the Harvard Law Review, arguably the most prestigious position that a young lawyer, that a law student could ever achieve. With apologies to my friends at Stanford and Chicago. Nevertheless, he is presumed to know these things. His Justice Department was before federal judges arguing the very opposite of what he was telling the American people. Mm-hmm. So who do we believe? Lawyers who have an obligation to be honest to the court, or the president who's cavalier about the truth?
Judge, thanks for being here.
Of course.